All right, now that I've done all the techniques to kind of match the emoji I had, because I don't really need that mustache, now I'm going to actually use those same techniques to customize the emoji into my Skeletor head. So what's the big shape that's missing? Well, it's obviously the yellow skull, right? And I also don't need these horns, but it doesn't mean I need to delete them. I can just turn them off. Okay, the next thing is I want this purple circle to be the top of a skull. So I'm going to duplicate it, Command J. And then I'm going to double click it to change its color, and I'm going to pick a yellow. There's no yellow for me to copy from, so I'm going to use the color selector and the spectrum here, and then find a yellow that I think is good, like that. Yellow and purple are complements. So now I'm going to hit Command T to shrink that. I'm going to hold down Option while I drag it so it shrinks internally until I get about the width of the skull I want at the top. And then I'm going to right click and warp, and I'm going to customize this shape a little bit like I did for the horns to get kind of cheekbones for the top of a skull. Then hit return. Then I'm going to duplicate that, Command J, and that's a nice custom shape. And I'm going to hit Command T, and I'm going to flip it vertically. And then I'm going to shrink it, holding down Option so it centers, and then drag it down. Right? And now I've got like a jaw shape. But it looks a little bit more like a monkey, right? So maybe I want to try it this way. Flip it vertically again. Yeah, and that feels a little bit more like a skull shape. Okay, now I like where the eyes are. The nose I'm going to move up. So this is going to be handy. Notice on the Move tool, this is a setting that you're going to want for this. When you click on the Move tool, you'll see the tool options. You want Auto Select Layer to be checked. Auto select layer means now that I have a ton of these layers, all I have to do is click on one of them and it will select it. So if I click on the circle, and it's also why I have my onion skin layer locked, because if that was unlocked, it would just always click on the onion skin layer because that's transparent over everything. Okay, now that I have the auto select layer clicked for the Move tool, I can select multiple layers by holding down Shift. I'm going to click that one, and then this one, and then this one. And now you see how all three of those are highlighted. Now that means I can use the Move tool and move them all together. Move them up. But if I want to be even more clever about it, once I have multiple layers selected, I'm going to click on this folder icon next to the new layer icon. And that's going to group them all into a folder. And once they're a folder, I can do this, Command T, and I can actually warp that compound path into a shape I like more. Even though that's 3 different vector shapes, now they all move as one. But you'll notice if I right click, it won't let me warp them. It will only let me scale, rotate, skew, or distort them. So I'm going to try distort, and I'm just going to pull it at this end a little bit and pull it at this end a little bit. So warp is a little limited. And then I'm going to scale it and just shrink it into the center. There we go. So now I've got kind of the skull nose I want for my Skeletor. Okay, next, he's got, the teeth. So what I'm going to do is use the rectangle tool, which I haven't used yet. And I'm going to make a little gap. And I'll make it black. There we go. And then I'm going to duplicate it, Command J. Then use the Move tool and move it over and keep it in line. And I'll put it right in the center. There we go. And then duplicate it again. Command J, move it over. Try to get it fairly symmetrical. Remember, we're not trying for perfection. And then I'm going to do another rectangle tool that is black. And I'm going to make it a thin rectangle that just goes across the middle here to show the separation in the teeth. Okay. So now what are my vector shapes? If I turn off what I have, that's what I've got. And that looks Skeletor-ish. I don't know if I love it yet, so let's play with it a little. So I'll take that rectangle, and now, even though this is just a simple rectangle, I can Command T, and I can right click, and I can warp, and now I can pull down this bottom edge and get a more interesting shape. And maybe pull up this top edge. And that kind of cuts out the teeth for me a little bit in negative space. Good. And now I'm going to hit return. I like that. Now I want to round out the corners of his mouth. So I'm going to select that, hit Command T. Right click, warp, and push out and curve that side. Good. And instead of doing that again on this one, I'm just going to duplicate this again. Command J, Command T, flip it horizontal like I did with the horns, and just move it over and line it up. So it's fine to have too many shapes as long as they're doing what you want. And now I've got a mouth with some teeth in there. But it looks a little bit like the bat symbol. So what can I do? I'm going to add another little tooth at the bottom that is yellow. I'm going to center it right there, and I'm going to change its color. And then I got to move it above. There we go. And now I duplicate that, Command J, use the move tool, move it there, Command J, move tool, move it there, Command J, move tool, move it to the top, Command J, move tool, move it over here. And I was going to play with the gap in his teeth, but I'll just make one more just to make them all even. And then maybe move it down a little bit more. Remember, you can use the arrow keys for like fine nudging. There we go. So now we've got Skeletor's mouth. And at any time, I can adjust any one of these shapes and move them down a little bit. Good. Now I need to make that cloak, that purple behind, look like a cloak. So what can I do? I'm going to make a duplicate of it just in case. And then I'm going to hit Command T. I'm going to warp it. And I'm going to pull it out on that side and pull it out on this side. Right? Bend it in here and out. Bend it in here and out. So we're getting a lot of practice with the warp tool. And that's looking good. The problem is it's going beyond my canvas size. So if that happens, which can often happen, I am going to go to Image and Canvas Size, and I'm going to grow my canvas size. So the width looks pretty good, but I'm going to make the height taller. I'm going to make it 12 inches, and I'm going to make it grow from the top, so it grows down. And what canvas size does instead of image size is it just gives you more pixel space. It doesn't change your pixels, it just gives you more or less pixel space in the grid. But now I've got plenty of space to work with my Skeletor. What do I need? I need a dark shape behind his jaw. So I'm going to duplicate the purple circle, and I'm going to make its color a dark purple, and then push it on top. Right? And now I'm going to transform it, shrink it, and then warp it. Again, kind of tug down on it there and tug down on it here. And it might actually be better if it's not symmetrical. So it feels a little bit more like fabric and an opening in the fabric. So it's a little bit wider there, a little bit narrower here, a little bit tighter there, a little bit wider there. Now, what if it just needs something? Well, I like the little white accents behind these big circles. So what if I want to repeat those? This can be a little tricky, but I'm going to do an ellipse that's nice and thin and fill it with white. So it's a nice highlight. Black and white are very useful for graphics. I'm going to move it under the eye. See if I like that. It's kind of a sheen. And then I'm going to modify it a little bit. So let's see, where is it? Remember, I can use the Move tool with Auto Select to find that layer, because I have a lot of layers now. And then I'm going to transform it and warp it. But it's always good to just test if the basic shape is enough on its own. And by warping it, I can turn it into this kind of bean shape. And I like that, so I'm going to duplicate it on the other side. How do I do that? Command J, Command T, right click, flip horizontal, and then just move it over, try to keep it in line. That's about right from the nose. Okay, now I need to move it under, using Command left bracket, that other eye. And it looks like it can still move in just a little bit, so I'll use my arrow keys. So now that I've done that, maybe I need to do something on the chin. So I'm going to do one more. An ellipse. Keep it really kind of narrow. Center it. Fill it with white. And then move it up above. Okay, now looking at it, that white's too strong. So remember, you can always change your color. I'm going to start with the yellow, but then step it back. So it's going to be kind of a creamy white instead. And now I'm going to use that same color for the others as well. And I'm going to select them with the Auto Select tool, and I can select both of them, and then I can use what's called, well, actually it doesn't even matter. I'll just do it this way. Use the color select option to tone it down a bit. Color select by double clicking on the layer window and then clicking on the color I want. And then do I want to do that behind the eyes as well? Yeah, I might as well. So then change that. Change that. So once you get the hang of these tools and what options you have, it goes pretty fast. Now, one thing I really like is a little bit of a shadow on the cheekbone. So to do that, I'm going to duplicate this shape, which I've already made, Command J. Going to flip it vertically. Going to move it and rotate it and stretch it, holding down Shift, down. Maybe warp it a little too. And I'm going to turn it into a shadow. So I'm going to stretch it from here out, and then from the edge